Hello and welcome to the Internet of Things Made Simple. I'm Larry Bohumer. This is episode number 10, I guess a bit of a small milestone, and I thank you for joining us. As always, I ask two things. Check out our new webpage, theinternetofThingsMadeSimple.com, as it has some phenomenal material on IoT, and subscribe to this podcast using your favorite podcast service. In our main topic tonight, we're going to review some of the IoT products and services that were shown at CES this year in Las Vegas. But before we do that, we're going to open with something that's a little more close to your heart, that being your heart rate. Most people know that heart rate monitors are now available on many wearables. This is a great step forward for many people, but I do offer a key warning, which I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes. As a background, your heart rate, especially your resting heart rate, can tell an awful lot about your health. A rise in resting heart rate might signal the early sign of a heart condition, as there is a link between an elevated heart rate and things like hypertension and other heart-based diseases. As well, a temporary elevated heart rate could show signs that perhaps you are working out too hard and not resting enough, or maybe you're coming down with a cold or even the flu. And finally, a reduction in heart rate can be a positive thing, as it can show an increase in your level of cardio fitness. Wearables have been offering wrist-based heart rate monitoring for a while. Anyone who knows anything about this stuff knows that it's not nearly as accurate as if you're wearing a chest strap, and I know the chest straps aren't always that comfortable. Apple's decided to take this on, like they do a lot of things, with the launch of their Watch 4, as it started to go beyond just basic heart rate monitoring and started offering a higher level of issue monitoring, such as some basic EKG work. Based on what we've heard over the last little while, it appears that Fitbit and Garmin aren't too far behind. I highly recommend you use these devices as guidelines only. They have a varying level of accuracy, and what they're very good at is telling you how you might be progressing, because they're not always perfectly accurate, and I refer to them as consistently inaccurate, but at least you can see some progress. So even if you started off a couple beats per minute off, if you see the rates getting better, you know your heart rate is improving, even though it's not perfectly as accurate as a chest-worn strap. However, if you have a medical condition, they're nowhere near accurate enough to be used for people that possibly have signs of another heart attack or have some kind of a long-term heart issue. You should be using much higher grade products for that. I do think with both the amount of money being spent and the size of the companies involved, they definitely will get there one day. I think wrist-worn will be just about as accurate as chest strap at some point, but it's not there yet. So if you're just using it for day-to-day health, it's perfect to use a wearable for that. If you have a heart condition, you may want to look for something a little more sophisticated. When we come back from a short break, we're going to look at 5 different categories of products that were shown that use IoT at CES. Back in 5 seconds. Okay, welcome back. The first category we're going to talk about has to do with healthcare. And in this category, we're going to have 2 product announcements as well as just a general announcement. The first one is the general announcement, and that's the relationship that's being done between Rush University Medical Center in Chicago and AT&T, specifically about how they're going to use 5G to enhance the healthcare they provide. They quoted 2 things that I've spoken about as 2 advantages of 5G, and that being the lower latency and ultra-fast speed. And that's going to allow them to use different technologies like AR and VR, as well as to gather information both from inside the hospital as well as from the field much more efficiently. Although there wasn't an actual product announcement coming out of this, I think it's a great step forward. The second one was a product announcement, and that's from a company called ChronoLife, and they've announced a vest that uses different sensors. The vest kind of looks like something a professor might wear, so I don't know if stylish comes into mind when you look at it. However, if you're wearing a vest like this, I think you're more concerned about the functionality. What it does is it measures 6 key stats from your body, and then it combines that with some machine learning and other technology they've integrated to better predict a future heart attack. It's aimed at people who have either had a heart attack or are showing signs or have history of a possible heart attack. It doesn't require charging, and it can be put into the wash, which makes it very user-friendly. In terms of its communication, it can work in an offline mode, which is great because you're not always connected. But when it does connect, it uses Bluetooth and a smartphone application to connect. Great idea. The second product is one that I definitely looked at buying, and that's from a company called Wind, with a Y, not an I. And the product is called the Halo and Home Purifier. It's aimed for people like me who have allergies, and it's great because it can do a few things. One, it senses, so it can accurately determine the level of different allergens as well as smoke and pollution level if you live in an area that has those in too high levels. But then it does something even better though. It uses AI and other intelligence to determine not only the level of each particle, but to take customized action. And it even goes one step further than that, because if you tell it what your activities are going to be that day, so you plan on working out indoors or doing something else, it can even go as far as to optimize the air for your particular activity, which is really cool. The second main category is kind of related to the first because it's to do with health, but it's actually exercise. This is an area that's very well known to IoT, and in fact, we have an upcoming podcast. It has to do with IoT and sports, and it's linked with the Super Bowl, so if you're a football fan, you kind of want to tune in, and that's coming up later on in January. And there were no shortage of products to do with exercise, but I wanted to highlight three that perhaps might not have received as much attention as other products at CES. The first is kettlebells, which is a piece of equipment that does not exactly scream high technology. Kettlebells are a different variation of a dumbbell, and they look like something that were used in those 1930s black and white movies where guys were exercising. However, if you use them properly, they are quite effective, and it is a product that I use regularly. I do have a number of kettlebells because I find it helps to build functional strength, as I call it, by using different muscles at the same time. One of the issues that I have, and my wife definitely has too, is that because you have to have a variety of them for different weights, they tend to be scattered around. And because they're solid metal, if you happen to give a bit of a kick to it by accident and stub your toe, it doesn't tend to move. Your toe's the one taking the brunt. Enter in a product called Kettlebell Connect, which is the first smart kettlebell that I've ever seen. I didn't do a lot of research on it, so perhaps there are other ones. The idea is that this kettlebell has a little display on it, and you can type in a variety of weights. I think ranging from 6 pounds, which is about 3 kilograms, up to the mid 40s pounds, so about 20 kilograms. And the bell will actually adjust itself, and that we only have to have a single bell for those wide ranges. I think that's a great idea. I think a lot of people didn't want to get into the kettlebells because of the size and the amount of space it takes up. Great product. The second is not so much a brand new product in terms of the idea, but it's a company getting into it. And that's Garmin's venture into cellular. As somebody who's in their late 40s, who runs alone a fair amount of the time, I am obviously concerned about my health. You know, if you have a heart attack, you want to be able to call. So I'm always carrying my phone with me. And other wearables have integrated cellular inside, you know, the Apple Watch and other ones. So people using those don't have to carry their phones. But Garmin hadn't. And that was one of the features that was definitely lacking in their lineup. Their new version of the Vivo Active 3, which is the watch that I wear on an everyday basis. And if you get a chance, you can check out my review on the Novatech Knows YouTube webpage. We'll use LTE to alert for things like impact detection. I assume they mean a car hitting you and you hitting the ground. I'm not quite sure what else they'd be detecting. And it can also be used for downloading new music, although I think most people would do that on Wi-Fi. It's good to know that you could download a new song if you're really looking forward to that kind of motivation. So good move, Garmin. The final product in the area of exercise, I believe is pronounced Xenoma. I'm not quite sure. And what they're doing is also not new. They're adding sensors to body-worn equipment for sports and for other health reasons. Again, not new. Under Armour shoes did that a while ago, which had different sensors for tracking. What they've done, though, is they partnered up with some very smart people in the world of AI to take it one step further. And these are equipment that's worn on the body, so they showed a shirt and pants, and I think they got socks and things as well. So not only will it track the usual, how you're breathing, how you're sweating, your temperature, that kind of stuff, it can detect things like how much your ankle and hips might flex or rotate, which would be used for a couple of things. If somebody has turned over their ankle or has done something to their hip, you'd be able to see it right away, even if the person couldn't call in. The other part is if they're recovering from an injury, you can be notified about how the kind of movement they're doing. So perhaps they're not moving enough and you need them to move more to keep the joint flexible, I guess. The last thing it can be used for, which has been used by other wearables, is if you have key workers in the field. So oil and gas, construction, healthcare, military, where you want to know if they're overly fatigued, if they're ill, if they're feeling well. These products can be used to detect any kind of issues with a spike in temperature for fever, those kind of things. The third category we're going to go on to before we go to a short break has to do with AR and robotics. And that's a pretty widespread category. But I picked 3 products that I thought were a little different. The first is the Views VR camera. This is for the wannabe Steven Spielbergs because it's a pretty cool camera that allows you to create films and different videos using 360-degree panorama, I guess it's called, as well as 3D videos, and you can do it while on the move. So it is pretty cool, and it is a cool-looking camera, by the way. It appears to have a decent microphone. I'm not an audiophile, so if somebody is, you can feel free to correct me on that. I was kind of amazed, though. It had 8 HD lenses, which kind of seemed like overkill to me, but again, I don't know much about that. It just seemed really cool. And you can record for up to 2 hours on a single charge, which to me seems fine. Even better, though, it's pretty small. You're not talking about this big honking shoulder thing. It looks like it could basically fit in your hand, and it weighs roughly about 450 grams, which is about 1 pound. So great product. I thought it was one where I'm sure there are other VR cameras out there. I just thought this one was really cool. The second one also has a pretty cool factor, and that's the UBTech, I think that's how you pronounce it, not UBTech, walker. I've actually seen UBTech from their smaller robots, and I think my son has some of these building kits from them. But they have a much cooler, bigger one. It's about 5 feet tall, a little bit less than that, I guess. It looks like it weighs a ton, but it's not. It's 150 pounds or so. And it's kind of cute, I guess. Somebody else called it adorable. It uses a variety of sensors and balancers, so it seems to be able to go over different terrains, but I think they more mean going over carpet and that kind of stuff. It doesn't look like it could handle, climbing a mountain, but it looks like it could handle most things around the house. At this point, I think it functions more like a mobile computer, video surveillance device, that kind of thing. I don't really think it functions as what we consider, that robot butler. But you know what? It looks like an interesting platform to build off of, and I was actually pretty impressed by the product. The last one has very little functionality, and I don't think they care about that. And it's called the Lovot. I think you're supposed to pronounce it Lovot. It looks kind of like a Disney character come to life. Somebody else called it a Furby, whatever you call those stupid things. But unlike how most people think of robots, though, it's not really trying to make your life easier. And in fact, I think it could make your life harder in some ways because it kind of gets in the way. But its job or role is to increase the enjoyment in your life. It stands about 2 feet tall. I think they said it weighs about as much as a small baby. So, 10, 15 pounds or 5, 7 kilograms. And it interacts with you using what's, I guess, could be best described as kind of an adorable set of eyes and kind of an odd little bit of chirps. It doesn't speak, doesn't say any words. It does move. And from what I could see in the videos, it seems to like to interact with people. It wants to surprise you. It rather enjoys being affectionate. Apparently even asked to be picked up and hugged. So where I see it is kind of the ideal pet or companion for people who can't have pets. Perhaps, their allergies, or perhaps you're too busy to look after one. I see it more like a pet replacement than I do a robot. So it was kind of interesting, but we'll have to see how it does. When we come back from a short break, we're going to look at 2 more categories. One are what I call dumb products, and I know I'm going to get yelled at for calling some of these that name. And the last category has to do with vehicles and drones. And we have 2 cool examples to talk about. Back in 5 seconds. Okay, welcome back. Whenever you criticize somebody's products, whether you call them dumb products, whether you say they're not needed, whether you say there's no use for them, or if you say that they only solve first world problems, you're going to have a lot of people mad at you. And I can see why. It's someone's baby out there. Somebody designed this product, did the napkin drawing, raised money, or went into their own savings to do it. They probably have some brilliant engineering people, some great marketing people, even some great salespeople, and they don't want to hear negative things about their product. This is just my opinion. We might look back 5 years from now, and these three products could change industries and become multi-billion-dollar products. I just don't see it. So this is what I'm going to go into here, are three products that I don't see the real need for them the same way other people do. The first one has to do with baking bread, which is not something you normally associate with CES. And this is a product called the Bread Bot from a company out of Washington State. The idea is that if you really need a lot of bread made, it makes up to 10 loaves per hour and just under 240 loaves in a 24-hour period, that it can make it for you. And that's great if you need that much. I think most people do, that they were going after bakeries, but they're going after convenience stores and restaurants and even schools to produce their own bread. I just don't think there's that much of a market. Like, it is a really cool looking product, but at a 6-figure plus price tag, there must be some learning curve to it. I don't even know where you'd store this amount of bread if you were cranking it out. I think they're expecting people that need it all the time, so I wouldn't store it much. To me, it just seemed like a product without a market. And again, I wish these guys well. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. The second one, you had to know it was coming, and that's the smart diaper by a company called Monit or Monit, depending on how you pronounce it. And yeah, I've changed diapers. I know how much fun it is to pick the baby up and have to do the sniff test. However, unless you have a really bad nose, and even I have allergies, and even I could smell it, so I'm not quite sure this is as needed as some people think they are. But assuming you wanted one of these, you attach the sensor to the baby's diaper, and it will let you know if your child has left you a gift in their diaper, if you want to call it that. Well, I can definitely see how it's going to reduce things like diaper rash. I just think it's a product that wasn't as needed. My kid didn't sit there for 3 hours at a time with a wet diaper. I was checking on them and working with them and interacting with them. So I personally don't think it's as needed as so many people do, but you know what? Again, it's probably going to be a very successful product. They seem to have a relationship with Kimberly-Clark already, who's one of the major diaper manufacturers. I think it's Huggies. So I can see this being a successful product. I just think it's a bit of a dumb product. And you're more than welcome to criticize me. I've gotten kind of used to that by now. The last one, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's the Mookie, or depending, it's got 2 O's and 2 K's by a company called Volta. If this product proves successful, it will show that people really freaking love their pets. Because this is a smart feeding station that recognizes your individual pet when they approach. So if you have a dog and a cat, for instance, and it dispenses not only the right food, but the right amount. And it's going to prevent what used to happen when we had both a dog and a cat, because the dog was smart. The dog would go over and just mow through the cat's food like at 90 miles an hour. And then once they finished the cat's food, they would go on to their own, knowing that the cat wouldn't touch their food. They were kind of smart. We used a very simple solution. We moved the cat's food to a place on a higher shelf where the dog couldn't get at it. So only she could reach it. So it solved 2 things. 1, the dog didn't eat the food. And 2, the cat had to get a bit of a jump involved, so got a bit of exercise as well. So to me, that solved the problem. Their other issue they claim they're solving is freshness, because they can store the food only as needed to be dispensed. And I guess they must have some kind of a seal it tight kind of container to keep the food fresh. Which, when you consider that both my cat and dog enjoyed drinking water directly out of the toilet, even when they had a dish full of water sitting right there, I'm not quite sure that's a problem for them. I'm pretty sure that the freshness is not really on their mind the same way that we think it is. Again, if you're busy and perhaps you travel a fair amount, I can see how this will help with a cat. You're not going to leave a dog alone for 36 hours very often, but I can see, the cat, this could give them food every day. I guess it's a problem, but to me, this screams out first world problem. I really don't think this is a product that solves as many issues as they think it does. But again, who knows? The last overall category has to do with vehicles and drones, and there was no shortage of vehicles and drones at CES, but I'm going to talk about 2 that were kind of unique. There's no point in talking about, a bit of a change to a Mustang from Ford, or, a new change to a electric vehicle. That's not really going to change much. The 2 I want to talk about, though, the first one was from iTree, and it's their hybrid power drone. This thing scores pretty high in the coolness factor, I have to admit, although I do have a bit of a fascination with drones. What's more important, though, is its functionality. It can fly around for about 45 minutes, which is not bad, and it can drag around about 30 kilograms, which is mid-60s pounds for my American friends, and that makes it ideal for a couple of applications. The one was deliveries. I could see someone like Amazon using this, just blasting out to different communities, especially rural communities, for different size packages. But the other way they're using it for has to do with agriculture. And what they're doing is attaching agriculture sprays and different disinfectants and things like that are used in agriculture. And this allows them to not have to go out there and do it by hand or by machine. It's much more efficient this way. The last way is a little different. It's not a new area for drones in that they're using it for inspections, and that's for everything from water towers to buildings to mine shafts. Very interesting product, very cool. The second product is from a company that makes my dishwasher, and I have to admit I haven't had the best experience with this dishwasher, so I have to wonder, is this really an area that they want to go into? Shouldn't they just fix the dishwasher in the first place? And that's from Bosch, and they've made it a product called the Connected Pod. It's actually not Bosch's product. It's a product that a lot of their technology is on board, so they wanted to show it off. It kind of looks like if you were to combine golf cart and a small bus, if they were to have a love child, that's kind of what it looks like, and it gives you some space for people to sit down. So I can see it being used for short transports, and that's probably where it's going to have the most success. It can be driven by a human or eventually autonomously. And it's going to take off for things like, university campuses where you go between buildings. Perhaps it could be an airport shuttle. And I could definitely see it in some downtown cores as well. Again, it's not Bosch's product. It's their technology. But I could see this product having a certain level of success. I didn't cover a lot of products from CES here. I just cover the ones that caught the most interest and seem to have the most link towards IoT. If you have any questions or concerns or any other products you want me to talk about, or anything else for that matter, as always, drop me a note. If you're connected with me on LinkedIn, that's a good way to start. We have a Facebook page, The Internet of Things Made Simple. You can send me a note through the Facebook page as well. Or if we happen to have a personal relationship, drop me an email or phone call. Other than that, I'm out of here. Thanks again for listening. I'm Larry Bushhumer.